much for joining us for the Congressional Report. I'm here with Congressman Steve Cohen. How are you?
Good, Kontji. Thank you for joining us today.
Okay, we have a lot to get through here, so
it's been a while since the show's been on. You know, we took a 6-month hiatus because of the election. You can't be on television 3 months before an election.
It's a conflict.
So the show, which has run since 1982, has been in a hiatus period since last May.
Oh boy, so we really have a lot to get through. Well, first of all, throughout the year 2010, you received so many awards, I can't really name them all. What would you say was your greatest accomplishment in 2010?
Having a bill signed by the President in the Oval Office was the most significant thing. The Speech Act, which I sponsored with Senator Leahy in the Senate, which gives our First Amendment rights more power to our authors and writers in foreign markets, was a bill that I worked on for throughout my term in Congress. I'd passed it in the House in the 110th, but was unable to get the Senate to move on it because of a conflict that Senator Specter and Senator Schumer and some others had with our bill, and they never got around to it. And then we passed it, and were able to pass it in the House because Senator Leahy kind of took it over, and we had a bill signing in the Oval Office with President Obama, and that's kind of the high point of my I guess personal professional career.
Wow. Okay, well, you know, you brought up the election, and I know the last time we were here, a year ago, we learned that former Memphis Mayor Willie Harrington was running against you, and nobody knew what would happen. It appeared to be contentious. What did it feel like? I watched you dance the jig when you won the primary. Take me through, you know, the emotions and what it's been like to just retain your seat.
You know, it's been unusual. We've got great support in this district, as shown by the 79% we received against Mayor Harrington, the 74% with the Tea Party and Charlotte Bergman, and then 79% with Ms. Tinker 2 years ago. So we've got the support, but nevertheless, there have been people who've surfaced who thought they could take that support from me. It's a tough job being a congressman, a job I like but difficult because you're constantly going back and forth. There's so many issues to keep up with and people and things to do. And then we've constantly had an opponent breathing down our neck, whether it was Ms. Tinker announcing in May of 2007, right after I'd been elected, that she was going to run in 2008, or then Mayor Harrington coming out of nowhere and saying that he was going to run in 2009 in essence. And so it's been kind of a water torture, a constant little drip.
Water torture?
Kind of. It's kind of like a constant drip of water coming down on your forehead every day. And so you're out there and you're thinking, it's 8 months and it'll be over with. It's 7 months. It'll be 5 weeks. It'll be 7 days, whatever. And you're counting down to the time that you're finished with the election. You're finished with the whole. In that case, the Willie Harrington thing, the idea that, you know, can Willie beat you? What Willie says? I mean,
when to respond. How do you know when you're going to respond and when you're going to ignore something?
Well, I've always felt that an incumbent determines the election, and it's determined on the incumbent's performance in office and whether the constituents feel that he has done or she has done a good job of representing them in the position, whether it be the Congress in Washington or the Senate in Nashville, and perform the duties and services at home as you should. And I've always felt that if I did my job, I'd be fine.
All right, let's speak about the election process. I know that you ended up writing a letter to call for a federal investigation of how the elections were carried out. The wrong data was input into the computers that day, and a lot of candidates were upset about it. Tell me how you feel about how the investigation was carried out.
Well, the investigation was carried out by the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation at the request of District Attorney General Bill Gibbons, who I probably also his office participated in some way, I'm not sure, but basically it was the State Tennessee Bureau of Investigation. My district director, Randy Wade, was a candidate for sheriff and ran a real good race. He worked extremely hard, and I thought Randy would win. Minerva Johnick, an old friend of mine, was a candidate for a criminal court clerk. I thought Minerva would win, and Regina Morrison, and there were other candidates on the ticket, Macklin and Wilburn and Dixon and company. And I really thought that Randy would win. I thought Minerva would win. I felt sure Regina would win. And I thought some of the others had a shot. But it just turned out to be a Republican year. And the election was a bellwether, which we might not have realized. The canary singing or dying, I guess the canary dying is the symbol of the canary in the pipe that the oxygen's leaving in the mines. And the Republicans just turned out in tremendous numbers. They had 3 candidates in District 7, which is North Shelby County, not part of my district, but a large part of the Shelby County vote, in Fincher and Dr. Flynn and the other wealthy guy from Kirkpatrick or Kirkland or whatever his name was from Jackson, a footnote. And then they had several gubernatorial candidates. Bill Haslam spending a record amount of money. Ramsey spent money, Wamp spent money throughout the entire district, and that included all of Shelby County. And that amount of money and that on television and the amount of effort that they put out to get the Republican vote out, and the fact that the Democratic vote was down throughout the nation, the worst primary vote in Democratic annals for like 35 years.
So in essence, you think that the investigation went as it should have, and that it was really just reality?
Yes, that's what happened, and it was I made a statement to that effect after the election and got myself in some trouble with some people because people were upset they lost, and I was upset some of them lost too. But nevertheless, it was turnout, and there was nothing you could do about it. And even though Randy ran as great a race as you could run, and he got a large amount of significant amount of Caucasian vote. There was issues about race. Well,
because he's an African American.
Right, and so African American candidates have more trouble getting white votes. Randy got a goodly number of white votes. It's just the Republican vote was out so strong, and they voted, and it happened. Now, the investigation, I think the Election Commission, what they did by putting the wrong date in, it was a serious mistake, but it was done by apparently as an honest mistake. And I think it was a mistake. It wasn't anything done nefariously to mess up the ballot.
Well, let's speak about just in general, you spoke about the Republican wave. Let's look at it from a national perspective. Tough time for your fellow Democrats on a federal level as well. Now, tell me what you think the Democratic Party that you're part of is going to do to change the image that Democrats maybe could not have resolved the economic issue faster.
Well, 2 things, Kontji. First, let me to close out the Shelby County election. I do think that the efforts by the folks who lost did show some errors in the Election Commission and some faulty ways that need to be corrected. Now, they're going to correct the input of the data of the absentee voters, but there were other things they've done that were faulty that need to be cleaned up, and some of the conduct of the Election Commissioner was unfortunate. The chairman of the commission, there were some unfortunate words he spoke that were not
What
becoming.
do you mean?
I don't want to go into them. I never have, but he made some comments. One about me that he posted on Facebook that was not something that an election commissioner should have done, and he owes me an apology and he owes the public an apology. And a person in that position should hold themselves like Caesar's wife. They should be beyond reproach, and he didn't do that. And he fell in love with the camera.
You're talking about Bill Giannini?
Yes. And that was unfortunate, and it made everything worse because it got to be confrontational. He didn't handle it well. As far as the Democrats nationally, we've got our work cut out for us because of a terrible economy that this president inherited when he took office in 2009, and the Congress inherited when it took over power in 2007. There had been the Bush. This is a Bush recession that would have been a Great Depression, but for the passage of the TARP. President Bush was president, recommended it with Secretary of Treasury Paulson. I voted for it, difficult vote, but the right thing to do. And that TARP vote of $700-something billion has mostly been paid back to the Treasury with interest, and it's felt that when General Motors, which has done a public issue, paid back the loan, started to pay back the equity that the government invested in it, that by the time a couple of years rolls around, there's a goodly chance General Motors will pay everything back to the government. It was a good initial public offering for General Motors at 33. That the TARP is going to be seen not only as in conjunction with the American Recovery and Investment Act, which two of the finest economists who reflect the general theory of economists throughout the country, Blender and Mark Zandi, said saved us from a Great Depression. The combination of the TARP, which was President Bush's proposal, and the ARA, which was proposed by President Obama. There are those like Krugman who don't feel the ARA was strong enough, that it should have been twice as much stimulus as it was. 40% of it was tax cuts. But we inherited this recession. We bailed ourselves out of what could have been a depression. The economy is improving, and the Democrats didn't get credit for it. What cost the Democrats the most was the lack of jobs, unemployment at 9.6%. The president had thought it would be less than that by this time because of the ARA. It was a deeper recession than maybe anybody could have realized, and he could only get the votes to do what he could do with the Republican Congress, the Republican senators, where you need to have 60 votes, and he could only get 2, Snow and Collins, to pass that ARA, and that was a requirement that there be 35%, 40%, whatever it was, of tax cuts. It was the largest tax cut, for middle-class tax cut, in maybe in history in the United States, and the Democrats didn't get credit for it because we didn't send people a check. We just took less out of your withholding, and people didn't even realize they got a tax cut. So we had a tough economy. We made it better, but it was a tough situation. We got blamed for Bush's recession. We also didn't get credit for helping get out of Iraq, because President Obama then doubled down in Afghanistan, and the people that wanted to get out of the war and get out of Iraq, get out of Afghanistan, which I think we should, who had helped elect a Democratic Congress in 06 and the President in 08, were upset. The Democratic vote was off. The Republican vote was up. The Tea Party got involved. They sent it to, maybe spiked it. And I think that the next 2 years, the economy will get better. The Congress will not help much because there's going to be a conflict between Speaker Boehner's and his Tea Party caucus in the House. I think you'll see that they don't contribute to getting us out of this economic morass that we're in. It'll get better because of the ARA, but it won't be blamed on the Democrats. They'll be blamed on the Republican House, and I think the Democrats will come back some in 2012.
You know, Speaker of the House Nancy Pelosi has often been the poster child for Democratic shortcomings. What made you support her as a minority leader?
She's a great woman. She's a great individual, great human being. I know Nancy Pelosi. She's warm. She's genuine. She's focused on issues. She is a good head counter. She's a smart woman. She stays on message. She's an excellent fundraiser. She cares about her members. She's a great leader. She was one of the great speakers, and history will judge her, one of the great speakers in the United States history. Most powerful woman in politics in the history of this United States of America. Presided over the 110th, 111th Congress and got the votes to raise the minimum wage, which hadn't been raised in like 12, 13 years, to pass health care, which had been a project in this nation for over 100 years, starting with Teddy Roosevelt talking about the need for it, continuing on through Harry Truman and Richard Nixon, Bill Clinton, and others. Got the votes. Got the votes for climate change. People might not like cap and trade. I understand that, but climate trade's a major issue that this country has to deal with, and this world has to deal with to save this planet.
A lot of debate on that.
And she passed that bill. There is, but she passed a bill which nobody else had ever done, and she took the issue, and she decided she was going to get something done on it. The Senate didn't. Lilly Ledbetter to help women in the workplace and minorities who get discriminated against have a better access to the courts. Tobacco legislation, save children's lives, and to see to it that tobacco is marketed differently, that people know the truth about tobacco and they can't cater to try to pander to children.
You really know her voting.
I know what the Congress did. I was there. We got a lot done. We got student loans passed to where the private groups are going to be taken out of the student loan business. More money for the students, less cost. Only have to pay back 10% of their income when they come back to paying back their income. A National Service Corps passed, which was Ted Kennedy's dream. A children's health plan, 11 million more children on insurance. a tremendous portfolio of issues that she passed, probably second only in the last 60 years to the 1965 Congress that Lyndon Johnson was president, and I guess John McCormick was speaker. So she did a great job. She's focused. She can raise money. She'll fight. And I've told Speaker Pelosi several times what she needs to do is she needs to go on television shows. She needs to go on Oprah. She needs to go on The View. She needs to go on CBS Sunday Morning.
Did you hear that, Nancy? But you mentioned health care reform. Do you feel that it went in the right direction with all the amendments? And I've spoken with business owners who fear that when this goes into effect, that it's going to force them to actually cut benefits, health care benefits for their employees. Can you explain how it would work?
Well, for one thing, the facts have shown, and it came out after the election, unfortunately, not that it made any difference because the Republicans had to spend on it, that more small businesses are giving their employees insurance than before because they're getting subsidies from the federal government to give their employees insurance. So small business is benefiting.
Isn't it all or nothing, though? Isn't there, I don't know if there are misconceptions that are being put out there, but I've had some business owners say, if I don't have all of my employees under the new health care plan, then, I'm going to have to pay out.
Yeah, but most people are doing that. That's what a group plan is, and you've got to have all your employees. If you pick and choose, and you just take the young people,
some people won't opt for it.
Well, some won't, and then they'll go into the employees will go into a plan, a state plan, and there'll be choices to pick when they get set up, and insurance will be cheaper because out of this pool, because there'll be coverage with group benefits, and people won't just have to buy as individuals. They'll be in a group that'll give them better rates. The fact is that the constituent elements are those that, while the Republicans say they want to defeat health care in this Congress and do it by funding, I don't think that the people are going to be against having children covered on their parents' insurance up into the age of 26. That's a great benefit for people with children. Now, I had somebody come to me and say, well, we don't want to have this in our plan, and we got a bunch of older people in our plan, and they don't have children that are 20, 22, 23, 24, 25. Well, I can't believe that a plan doesn't have some people that have children in those age and that would benefit from it. But if your group is that old, then you would benefit from the additional monies that you'll get as a senior from the donut hole being closed. The donut hole is gradually being closed, and by I think it's 2020 it will be closed. Now, I don't think the Republicans are going to want to say we want to keep this donut hole for seniors and have them have to pay at a certain amount a full price for their drugs. That will be closed because of this law. It's going to take time to have to come into effect. But you're not going to want to say, no, we like the donut hole, because people don't. You're not going to want to say that you want to say the children can't stay on their insurance, their parents, till they're 26. You're not going to want to say pre-existing conditions for children, which right now can't keep children off of a policy, should keep children from getting insurance. And eventually pre-existing conditions will not stop parents or adults from getting insurance. So pre-existing conditions is something else that has been a bad part of our system, and you just take those people and you forget them. You don't get health care and you go broke. Well, that's wrong. You're not going to want to say that there should be a yearly cap on your benefits, and then too bad, you get too sick, you're out, or a lifetime cap. President Obama said this was insurance reform on steroids, and it was. And if you look at the constituent elements of the bill, they are such that the Republicans won't be able to muster the votes or the political courage or the interest in changing, because it's good stuff for America. I went to a dinner the other night put on by the Lyndon Baines Johnson Foundation. The first dinner they've had in Washington, honored John Lewis and gave him the first Lyndon B. Johnson All-American Justice Award. And it was a beautiful dinner, and they had pictures of John Lewis as a student who'd marched with Dr. King in the White House talking to President Johnson about the Civil Rights Act that was passed in 1964 and the Voting Rights Act of 1965. The fact is, when the Civil Rights Act was passed, when the Voting Rights Act was passed, and when Medicare was passed in 1965, they were all roundly condemned. And it was communism and it was socialism. Those were the things people said about the Voting Rights Act, the Civil Rights Act, and Medicare. Well, nobody calls those things communism or socialism anymore. It's American. And this will be looked at as American too. We're the only industrialized country in the world without health insurance. Yes, some things kind of been, the process wasn't good. It shouldn't have dragged on as long as it did. The president probably shouldn't have reached out like he did to try to make it bipartisan, because there was no interest on the Republican side to make it bipartisan. They were just against President Obama and against health care, and we only got one vote in the House for the bill, and that was Chow from New Orleans, who was defeated this time, defeated because he was elected in a special election where he normally wouldn't have gotten elected anyway, and he didn't vote till there were 217 votes already in the board. So in the House, we got no Republican support, and in the Senate, they didn't either, and that's why they had to go to a process not of conference committee to pass a bill and get a conference between the House and the Senate, which would have made for a better bill, but had to go to budget reconciliation because it only needs 50 votes. It limited what you can do, and that was because the Republicans wouldn't support the bill and get the 60 votes for cloture, filibuster, stopping filibuster in the Senate and allowing the bill to come to a vote. So the process was ugly. The Nelson, Nebraska compromise, which didn't end up in the bill, was ugly. Some of the stuff that was talked about with Mary Landrieu in Louisiana, they call the Louisiana Compromise, not attractive. They say two things you shouldn't see being made: sausage and legislation. This legislation was very public, very transparent, went on for a long time, and the Senate was in session last Christmas the whole week on television, and it wasn't pretty, and Ben Nelson wasn't very pretty. But the bottom line is, the bill was passed. It was a long time coming. The American people, the great percentage of American people will benefit from it, and the great percentage of American people will embrace it as time goes on and it gets implemented.
All right, you've brought a ton of money to Memphis and the 9th District. Can you talk about some of the money that's come to us from, UT Health, St. Jude, for housing, homelessness, to battle that, University of Memphis, Memphis Fire Services. Talk about how some of that money is going to be distributed and used.
Well, the federal government is so important for Memphis, and that's one of the problems we've got. We've got our tax-based property taxes are really at the top level. Our taxes are too high. I don't think they can go up much more. The state depends on the sales tax for most of its revenue, and so the state government is not efficient. It's not elastic. And we're not going to get much out of the state government, and we've had problems. They've had to cut back and cut back and cut back. The federal government, through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, which I mentioned 35 to 40% was tax breaks. Another 30% was aid to the states, which provided the funding for our firefighters, for our policemen, and for our teachers. 3 million firefighters, policemen, and teachers in this country would have been unemployed if it weren't for the ARA, and that includes Memphis. So the monies we've gotten have been great to help with fire and police and teachers, basic services. We got over $100 million for the Memphis City school system and about $20 million from the Shelby County school system out of the first batch of ARA money. That was important. A lot of it was done on the basis of need, and Memphis is a needy system. Monies we've gotten over the years here they'll help with the airport. I've got a quote-unquote earmark in the bill to help with, which along with Senator Alexander, to help with the bridge over Winchester to make it earthquake come to earthquake standards. That's important. If there's an earthquake, we need those runways to get goods in and out of the city, and we need it in general to keep our commerce going. That's important. We've got monies for Elvis Presley Boulevard improvements to improve that street, and one of our industries is tourism, and it revolves around Graceland, and that'll help the community of Whitehaven.
It's going to be a big deal.
It's a major thing for that area.
Renovation, revitalization that's going to be going on.
Of Elvis Presley Boulevard, and then consequently of Graceland.
Yeah.
It's going to be major for monies here. The University of Memphis, the University of Tennessee have been two large recipients of monies that I've worked on for different studies, and they've been studies. Some of them have dealt with the greening of our country, working on biofuels, and worked with Memphis Bioworks on monies as well. We've gotten, hopefully we'll get this through, but just question whether these earmarks will go through. But Memphis Bioworks getting a grant out of agriculture, which is unusual, but we're able to get that and help them work with some rural areas and bring in some biomass and do some work on biofuels. The opportunities that we've got in Memphis revolve around tourism, revolve around the airport, revolve around the biomedical industry. We've got to support those, and the federal government supports them in major, major ways. St. Jude gets a lot of contributions They do a lot, most of their money raising is private, but they also get federal funds. And we work closely with all of our different groups to try to get funding. Crime, Stevie Moore has got a great program, a fund,
Stop the Killing.
Stop the Killing, for getting over beyond unnecessary negatives. We're trying to get him some funds to do some work in the communities to get out there and let the word go out to children and others, and to have second chance programs. We got money for second chance programs that are important. I was out at a program, an environmental program in Raleigh, where there's a senior home that has been refitted with all green type appliances and innovations, all funded through the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act through a grant. So there's a lot of good things happening with federal funding here in Memphis. And if there's a cutback, which has been promised, it's going to hurt Memphis because we are dependent on it. We've got so many people who need federal funds. They need help with health care, and the health bill will have money for community health centers, which we need. We hope to have a newborn bill passed, which we passed in the House, then we get the authorization through the Senate. Again, that's a problem. But the scourge of infant mortality needs to be, we can have outreach and research to help reduce that. Memphis is unfortunately one at the top, and that can be stopped through education. And we have funding through an earmark to help with the County Mayor Wharton at the time's project on infant mortality, and help fund that. So when there's a need in the community, whether it's Elvis Presley Boulevard, whether it's health care, whether it's infant mortality, whether it's crime, Blue Crush, and Operation Safe Community, University of Memphis, we have responded, and we try to respond to those things that work, that are effective, and help make Memphis a better place to live.
You spoke about being at the top, the foreclosure capital of the nation. You have worked extensively with different bills to tackle the issue. Can you talk about that?
We've had foreclosure workshops. We've had a couple of them here to help people individually, and we do work in our office. Beanie Self is one of my office staff members. Willie Henry's another, who work on those issues with people when they can help. We've passed legislation in the Congress, but most of it has not been as successful as we'd have wanted. The president had recommendations on bills to try to encourage mortgage holders to work with their customers to try to reduce the loans or to make the terms better, and to work with them. It hadn't worked. There has been some help from the HAMP program, but not enough. One bill we passed, and we worked hard on the House but never got it through the Senate, was one to allow people to use the bankruptcy if necessary, to put their houses in bankruptcy. You can't, and to keep your house. You can't get your term, let the judge reduce the terms, either the payment or stretch out the number of years, and give you a better opportunity to keep your house. You can do that with your vacation home. You can do it with a airplane. You can do it with a yacht. You can't do it with your primary residence. It's an anachronism in the law put in there for whatever reasons, and we tried to take it out. We passed it in this House, didn't get through the Senate. I think if that would have happened, bankruptcy judges could have helped keep people in their homes and get at levels that they could afford. But they're not allowed to reduce the term or change the term. And the mortgage folks are against that. The banks are against it. But I think they would benefit in the long run by still getting payments on the houses rather than having houses foreclosed. When the houses get foreclosed, they lose everything, and neighborhoods go down. And they have houses that they've financed in some of those neighborhoods, but the values go down because crime goes up and the maintenance of the neighborhood goes down. The foreclosure crisis is great, and we haven't solved it, and it's going to continue going on. And again, I would submit, this is part of what happened during the Bush-Cheney years when there was not oversight. They let the Wall Street run wild. There wasn't regulation, and these mortgage folks didn't care if you could afford the house or not. They just wanted to get the mortgages and then sell them secondarily on the financial market, get them bundled into these derivatives. They were sold internationally, and it almost caused the world economy to fall into a great crisis and a Great Depression. And it all started it was because of the housing bubble, encouraged by President Bush and not regulated, the lack of regulation, which we've had financial services reform, another credit to Nancy Pelosi and the 111th Congress, and credit card reform, another asset for Nancy Pelosi's checkpoints and what we accomplished in the 111th Congress, but didn't get credit for. Over strong fights from Wall Street. These were difficult things. And the foreclosure situation's still out there, and it's going to be a problem.
Do you think it's fair to, just to continue to point fingers and because now it's in your hands?
It's in our hands, and we've helped. But just like we started the program with, the Democrats have got problems, and we lost the election in record numbers. But we lost it, in my opinion, because of issues that the public is upset about, rightfully so: lack of jobs, foreclosures, economic morass. There are problems they don't like, Wall Street, but the Democrats have done, and the Congress has done, and the President's done a good job at tackling and trying to tackle and bring under control these issues. We haven't been successful. We tried, and we haven't had help from the Republicans, whose main interest, and Mitch McConnell said it, is defeating Barack Obama in 2012, not getting this country back. Mitch McConnell didn't say our main purpose is to take jobs down to 7% unemployment. He didn't say our main job is to keep people in their homes. He didn't say the main thing is to create economic vitality. He said our main purpose is to defeat Barack Obama. That's not the right thing for the Republicans to say, but it's a fact. And so you have to come back and let people know, why are we in this situation? What have we done to correct it? And what are we going to continue to do to correct it? And the problem has been, and all they've said is they want to go back to the Bush years, go back to the same type of let Wall Street control, let the bankers control, let them have the big salaries and the perks and not worry about it, and the market will take care of itself. Well, the market didn't take care of itself. The market almost took this world to its knees economically.
What about jobs? What do you do ultimately to bring jobs back to the 9th District?
Well, one thing I think we should have done, and we didn't do and we're not going to do with the Republican Congress, is like a works progress administration like we had during the Great Depression and President Roosevelt had it, and create public works jobs that do good infrastructure. I think we need to have much more infrastructure spending. We had some infrastructure in the ARA, but not enough shovel-ready projects. We need to pass the Surface Reauthorization Transportation Act and get roads and bridges and airports and runways all up to date and spend that money. That stimulus helps the economy, and those roads and those type of expenditures keep your economy moving. They get goods to market and get people moving. They're necessary. So we need to pass that Surface Reauthorization Transportation Act. We need to pass the Federal Aviation Reauthorization Act, which it was held up for a couple of reasons. One was Federal Express and the issue about whether it be under the National Labor Relations Act or whether it be under the Railway Labor Act. And I think now with the change in Congresses and the defeat of James Oberstar, who was chairman of the Transportation Committee and a very knowledgeable man in transportation, but had a war with Fred Smith going on over this act, and I think that bill will pass. And that's going to be good for the aviation industry, which is so important to our economy.
Because of FedEx being here.
Because of FedEx, and that brings in a lot of warehousing and a lot of jobs that are, I think a lot of the medical industry is here because of FedEx. A lot of our jobs are FedEx related, and so we've got to get that done. There was another problem with the question of inter-country flights. All the flights from California go out to the Virginia airport in Dulles, but there was an interest in having some of them come out of Reagan, and the people of Virginia don't want the extra air traffic and those jets flying into Reagan and over their land space. They'd rather keep them at Dulles, and Senator Warner held the bill up partially because of the routes and having California flights go out of Reagan. That'll be resolved too. But I think we need to get our infrastructure moving. I think what Bernanke's doing with the economy is important and good, and we need to compete with the Chinese and the Germans and not let them have really a false economy that hurts us with the imbalance. We need to have more jobs in America.
And the outsourcing issue, how do you rebuild?
Well, the outsourcing happened again during the Bush years, and this was part of the whole idea of outsourcing and cheaper labor and not worrying about trade agreements that guarantee those people got wages and environmental concerns that affect the world but also affect our workers. One of the things we tried to do late in the Democratic Congress of this 111th, and we'll do in the 112th, is to emphasize making it in America. And if we have to subsidize certain industries in America to see that the jobs come here, we need to do that with tax credits and other methods to see that jobs come to America. And we need to eliminate foreign offshore tax advantages that corporations get that the Republicans refuse to go along with us on, to get them to invest more in America. They get credits for taking jobs out of America. That's wrong. And we've destroyed the middle class in this country. They've suffered the most. We've taken their jobs from them, shipping their jobs overseas. We need to bring those jobs back. And if you don't have a strong middle class that can feed your economy, you won't be able to get out of the recession, because it's the middle class that does the spending to stimulate the economy. It's not the wealthy with their Mercedes-Benzes. It's not the wealthy with their Cartier and Tiffany trinkets for Christmas. It's the middle class buying iPods and buying shoes and clothes and games for their kids and buying Buicks, General Motors cars, buying American. And we need to bring those jobs back to America, and that's a major effort. The emphasis is going to be in the Democratic Congress is jobs in America, bringing jobs home, not encouraging outsourcing and taking those offshore credits away. Whether the Republicans work for us or not, I don't know. I don't know that they will. The multinationals really have a great control. And it was multinational corporations, Wall Streeters, insurance companies, that didn't like the reforms we put on Wall Street and our credit cards, bankers, who put tons of money into these 527s that flooded congressional districts with $500,000 and $1 million contributions out of nowhere, not contributions, but advertising campaigns with what was really propaganda. I mean, you saw ads. That's what caused this great defeat, was the Citizens United lawsuit, that the Supreme Court decision that said that there could be unlimited amount of corporate money put into elections. That corporate money came in like, it was illegal, came in like never before. And Democratic candidates were just flooded.
I noticed you were trying to make reforms with that.
We tried in the House, but you only make certain reforms. You could require some disclosure. You could require certain changes, but the fact is the Supreme Court's the law of the land, and unless you get a constitutional amendment, which has been proposed and which I would support, but takes a long time and probably won't pass with the way the states are, you can't overturn a Supreme Court decision with legislation. You can only tinker with it. That Supreme Court decision, the Supreme Court in Bush v. Gore determined who the President of the United States was. 5-4 decision said Bush, not Gore. Big difference in this world, in this country, because of that 5-4 decision. And then this past year, they did the Citizens United case saying corporations could put in unlimited amounts of money. They did it, and it resulted in the Republicans taking over Congress. The Supreme Court is responsible for the Bush presidency. They're responsible for this Republican Congress, and the Supreme Court has really, when they claim that they're not activists, have been very activist in changing rules for the benefit of the corporate, multinational, powerful. And they put in so much money, and they're not interested in the middle class. So many Tea Party people are middle class people that are hurt by foreclosures, looking for jobs, want some stability. They're having trouble making ends meet. They're not going to be helped by this Republican Congress that mostly wants to put money in the Bush tax cuts to the upper 1% and 2%. That's who they want to put the tax cuts to. They're not, which contributes $700 billion over 10 years to the deficit, which they claim to be concerned about, and they want to eliminate the inheritance tax entirely. Again, tremendous burden with the federal budget and the deficit, but benefiting the wealthy, the people, some of whom earned their money themselves and worked hard and earned it, but many of which were lucky their parents were born before they were and want to keep it that way. And this country has got the greatest division of wealth between the rich and the poor in its history. The middle class is eviscerated and disappearing, and what happened in this election is tremendous amounts of money. The Koch brothers in Texas and other wealthy individuals and hedge fund people, and there was no need to disclose. We tried to make transparency and require disclosure. We weren't able to do it because the Senate wouldn't go along with it. We won't know until sometime in the future who put that money in those 527s and controlled this election. And they said it was a tsunami. It was a wave, but it became a tsunami because of the money. And money needs to be taken out of the political system. I've sponsored a bill with some others to have public financing of elections. Unless we can get money out of the system and let ideas be controlling and not the raising of money and the spending of money, we're going to see more and more outsourcing of jobs, emphasis on giving money to the wealthy and less concern with bread and butter issues of public education and public health and the environment and the overall public good.
You have a lot of issues that you work on, so it was interesting to me when I saw that you did a workshop on how to obtain federal funding, pretty much trying to guide people through the application process and that kind of thing. Why did you feel like that was something important for you to spend your time doing?
We have lots of people who come to us looking for grants, some realistic and good proposals, and they've got a track record. Some aren't realistic. But the fact is people are looking for grants to get either child care agencies, different things that they want to get going. Child care seems to be a lot of them. The federal government's got a lot of money, and we need to avail ourselves of as much of it as we can and give people the opportunity to get it here in Memphis, help our economy and help our citizens. So we started that. We had an overflow crowd at the University of Memphis. At the FedEx Institute. We're going to do that on an annual basis and bring people in from the government to explain how to apply for federal grants.
What's your best tip?
There are
I know, there are so many.
But there are a lot. Beanie Self works in our office on grants. We have Risha Phils, who's my ledge director, works on those too. And she came down, we had a program just last month, right after the election, here at the Ben Hooks Library on grants. But we've also had them on how to apply for federal funding at the University of Memphis. We're going to do both. And that's one of the things we can help people with and bring the experts into town. We had a veterans luncheon right after the election too. It's our second annual veterans luncheon to honor our veterans. And with this year, Jay Robinson, our great new director of the Veterans Hospital, which I worked real hard to get him in that position because he's a star. And we're fortunate to have him. He had been at Dublin, Georgia, Congressman Jim Marshall's district. Jim Marshall asked him about him. He said, Jay Robinson's great. We'd hate to lose him. If you get him, you're lucky. We got a great VA administrator. The VA is going to be better, and we're going to take care of our veterans. But once you get in office, and we've been in now for 4 years, we start to do things on an annual basis. And the Veterans Luncheon is something we do every year to honor our veterans. We did it November 11. This year at the zoo. Next year probably the Civil Rights Museum. The first year we were at Elvis in Whitehaven. And then our jobs programs where we invite people in to learn how to get federal funding and grants. The grants was here at the Hooks. Federal funding in general is the University of Memphis, and those will be annual meetings we have to get the district extra funds in education.
What would you say, though, it would be, a good tip for someone to know?
Well, the web. There are ways to go about getting federal grants on the web, and our office can give you the directions on how to get on there to get up to date and to get
Gotcha.
notices of grants when they become available. And then you need help in drafting your grants, and we can't do that, but there's a grant center here in Memphis that can help people, and there are ways they can learn to do their grants. And some people here do a great job with grants, and some don't do as well, but the grant center can help.
All right, tell me, you want to prohibit employers from using credit checks as part of the hiring process.
Employment's difficult enough as is, and the economy's bad. A lot of good employees have lost their jobs because of the economy, not because they're not good employees, not because they're not trustworthy, but because of the economy. Federal Express had to cut back 10%. A lot of good people lost their jobs. A lot of employers are using credit checks, and if you don't have a good credit rating, they deny you employment. It's been shown that there's no connection between credit checks and a good employee, especially in this economy. And it tends to affect minorities more than it affects others because they are less likely to have accumulated wealth passed on generationally because of years of discrimination to tide them over through the tough times of being outside of a job. And so it has an effect which is probably illegal, because if something has, even though not intended to, but has the effect of being discriminatory toward minorities, it can be illegal, and that's something that is being looked into right now by the Economic Equal Opportunity Commission to see if this does have a discriminatory effect. But even the credit companies themselves, under questioning in different states, and several states have passed laws like this to deny say that you can't deny employment based on credit checks. The credit bureaus and credit companies who want to keep this going have not said that it's effective. They say they cannot point to any studies that shows it's effective, or that people that might have a bad credit rating are more likely to steal than others. Bernie Madoff had a great credit rating. stole. Some of the biggest thieves, Stanford Financial, right here in our community, headquartered in Houston, but right here in our community, Sir Isaac, what was his name? Sir Alan Stanford.
Out in it was in East Memphis.
East Memphis. Sir Alan Stanford, I'm sure he had a great credit rating, but he was stealing. And I don't think that the credit checks show whether somebody's trustworthy or not. In fact, if somebody's got a bad credit rating because they've been without a job and they're trying to get a job and they get a job, I think they're more likely to be honest and keep that job because they want that job to feed their families and or themselves, and they're going to keep that job, and they know that they were just out of a job and in that gray zone.
Speaking of feeding families, you authored a bill on food deserts. I thought that was interesting. Can you explain what that is and what you're trying to do?
There are a lot of sections in this country, particularly in the inner cities, where there are not convenient locations to buy vegetables and fruits and good quality food. The inner city of Memphis, supermarkets have moved out. A lot of areas they've moved out. And so people don't have fresh vegetables and fresh fruits, and they're more likely to eat fast food or foods that are of less nutritious, and that results in less healthy people and children. It's important that people have access for themselves, seniors and the young the most, to fresh vegetables, fresh foods, and it be convenient and affordable. We wanted to propose that we have encouragements, incentives through tax credits to grocery stores to locate in those areas. They're both rural and inner city. It also can be some of our markets that we have, like down at the train station, where fresh vegetables are brought in and made available to people.
The farmers market.
Farmers markets, and there are markets that have kind of sprouted up in different parts of the city. But you don't have that type of opportunity. If you go through South Memphis, you don't have the grocery stores that you'll see in East Memphis. In fact, if you go through South Memphis, you're not going to see the bookstores that you see in East Memphis. And if you don't have opportunities to get books, now you got libraries, but if you don't have bookstores and you don't have grocery stores, you're not going to have as nutritionally beneficial and culturally beneficial a society. And that's just something that we can't let happen because it destroys the inner city, and the city will be the end of the city of Memphis. Everybody needs to have opportunity.
Okay, one thing that was interesting to me is you made a point of supporting the limiting of expansion to March Madness, the teams.
Well, that's something. It's a funny thing. They were going to expand March Madness to 96 teams instead of 68. I think they went to 68 and expanded about 2 or about 4, but they expanded minimally. The season's supposed to mean something, and it should matter who wins the conference tournament or who wins the conference and who has a good season. Otherwise, the season's meaningless. And it was all about money and having extra games. It wasn't about giving the kids an opportunity to participate in March Madness and having that many more teams participate. It was the idea of that many more games on television. There's a congressman from Illinois, a Republican, Tim Johnson, who's a basketball aficionado. He knows more about basketball recruits and basketball teams in college and pro as well than anybody in Congress. And he and I are friends. And he wrote the letter, and I joined with him in the letter. And whether it had an effect or not, I don't know, but they didn't expand by that much, and I think that the NCAA made the right decision not to expand greater than they did.
All right. Now, let's get back to some of the talk about mortgages. That's something that's just so heavy on the minds here in the 9th District in particular because of all the problems we've been having. Tell me about your legislation that you supported to protect Americans from mortgage fraud. I know that, the former, mayor, Memphis Mayor Wharton. I think he county mayor when Wells Fargo lawsuit began. I can't remember if he, anyway. But there is a lawsuit pending against Wells Fargo, for instance. Can you talk about why you also put your voice to that?
Well, I think that there was encouragement of people to get into subprime loans. The mortgage companies made more money with the subprime loans, and they just wanted to sell those loans not so much to put people in houses or even to get the interest from the house payment, but to have an instrument that they could put and sell in a package to Wall Street that packaged them and sold them as these derivatives. I encourage everybody to go see the movie Inside Game. It's at Studio Square, and I think it's also out at Ridgeway. It's a documentary of Matt Damon, and it talks about shows this whole industry. And there's another documentary out there about this industry and how they manipulated the market. And it wasn't about so much the product, but about the financial instrument. Wells Fargo claims that they've not involved in defrauding people, but there's a lot of facts. There was a lawsuit brought in Maryland and Baltimore that was dismissed. I think it's been refiled. The one here in Memphis, Webb Brewer, formerly with Legal Services, and Mayor Wharton have been the primary people. We had a hearing at the University of Memphis Law School on this issue. Sheila Jackson Lee, a colleague of mine from Houston, came in for the hearing. The fact is, and Chairman Conyers is very interested in the issue, whether it continues in the next Congress with Chairman Lamar Smith, who'll be Chairman of Judiciary, or not, it's another issue. He's already said his issues are going to be immigration, reform, child porn. He has a couple, I'm trying to think of other two or three other, intellectual property and patent reform, and he had another issue that he was going to work on in a major way, but it didn't include mortgage fraud. There has been people, and particularly minorities, who have been intentionally led to subprime loans and put in houses with rates that weren't reasonable and without the documentation necessary to see that these people could afford their homes. And the individuals should be looked out after, and the companies that perpetrated this fraud should be prosecuted. And I think that both Mayor Wharton and the action of the City of Baltimore are good actions to try to bring these people to the fore and try to improve the industry, but I think the Justice Department needs to be involved as well, and they will be involved.
All right, you're also working to bring benefits to people who retrofit their homes to make them more energy efficient. Tell me how you anticipate this will play out more and more in the future, and where that stands.
Well, that was part of the monies came from the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act, and it went through the Community Action Agency here in Memphis, the county agency, or through Memphis Light, Gas, and Water. And we have to train. There's a program that goes through Bioworks and the community colleges to train people to do this retrofitting and greening of the homes. And once these people are trained, and that can be done through Southwest, it benefited from a federal grant, or through the Mississippi College over in West Memphis, that folks can go out and help energize these homes with energy efficient manners that'll save them money on their utility bill, help keep our country, make us more energy efficient, less dependent on Middle Eastern energy sources and other sources that both destroy our earth through emissions of carbon into the atmosphere, and cause us to be reliant on foreign sources for our oil. So we can become more energy efficient, protect us from foreign sources as well as environmental problems, and save people on the utility bills. And they have to just go through the either the Community Action Agency or the Memphis Light, Gas, and Water and get some of these funds to help energize, whether it's caulking, whether it's water tanks. And one thing we tried to do is a solar bill we had with Bernie Sanders to try to get more solar. Sharp Manufacturing produces solar panels, and we had a bill to help subsidize the purchase of solar heaters and photovoltaic cells to produce solar energy, and because it's too expensive. We've got the technology, but the expense is too great right now for most people. And if we subsidize the purchase of these new sciences, then we can help the individual with their energy bill and help our nation too. We need to do that, and so that's a major effort we've.
There's been so much talk about school funding in the area. You spoke of bringing $100 million to the schools in the past year. What are some of the things that you hope to do in the future with regards to schools within the 9th District?
Well, No Child Left Behind needs to be changed. Too much paperwork, too many tests being given by teachers. Teachers are leaving the public schools and going to charter schools or private schools because they don't like all of the testing and all the paperwork. We're not keeping our best teachers, we're running them away. The Gates Foundation blessed our community with, I think, about $100 million. Delaware and Tennessee were the first two states to get Race to the Top money. That was $500 million for the state of Tennessee, and it's give or take about $100 million for Memphis schools. It's going to take reform of how we do things, but hopefully it won't take that much in the way of testing. Teachers need to teach the student and not teach the test and do a bunch of testing, and that's going on right now. There's too much, but the No Child Left Behind was a innovation that hasn't really worked. It hadn't been funded, and it puts too much on the teachers and testing.
Do you think that that's going to happen during this session?
I don't know if it will or won't. I know that George Miller, who was the head of Education Committee, Education and Labor in the House, wanted to change it and bring about reforms. Whether the Republican, his counterpart that takes over, will or not, I don't know.
All right, well, I mean, I'm sure that looking into 2011, there's so many issues that you have your sights set on. Tell me about some of the things that you're looking forward to doing in the next year? Well,
we're going to continue. It might be so different. You're in the minority, you do more messaging than legislating, but we're going to work on the newborn bill and try to see that it gets authorized and work with Republicans, which we'll need to do, to try to get that accomplished. The credit check bill will be something we'll still be interested in. There's a goodly chance we can get something done on Airtropolis legislation, which would make the Memphis airport and other airports that are the center of an economic engine in a community as an airport, to get them funds from areas they can't get funds now. We've introduced an Airtropolis bill, and we're going to work on that, and we think we'll have a better chance to get that passed too.
Just, before you go on, that's a pretty big deal because, all the modes of transportation that we have here, not everybody has the river.
River, roads, runways, and rails. We've got all four. And that's important. That's why I'm on Transportation Committee. So we're going to try to help the Airtropolis, which helps the Lamar corridor, 78 from the airport going down to Mississippi, runs right by the
What would be done there?
Well, just widen that Lamar. The BNSF Railroad intermodal corridors out there. I've visited out there. I've visited the Canadian National. I've visited the CS and X. There's a lot of rail transportation that goes through and brings warehouse goods here, and it creates jobs.
Okay, the Med?
The Med's are always on the burner.
Yeah.
I take over from Bart Gordon and John Tanner. I work with John Tanner in passing legislation to get monies from Mississippi and Arkansas, and work with Bart Gordon. And that was one of the prides of my past year or two in getting that in the health care bill, that the extended disproportionate care for Tennessee through the year 2013. With Bart Gordon's retirement, John Tanner's retirement, I'm the prime guy on those bills rather than working with them. And we're going to continue to try to get disproportionate care payment for Tennessee hospitals, the Med in particular, and to continue the efforts to get matching funds from Nashville that count towards the Med, which Mayor Ford did a good job on when he was county mayor.
All right, well, we're running out of time. Any last words that you would like to share with the public, just to encourage them about what's to come?
Well, it's an honor to represent this district in the 9th District. I appreciate everybody's vote and the support that I received and the record numbers. I think it tells a good story about Memphis to the country, and how we've come on to vote on issues and not on race. I work hard. Our office works hard. The number of the office is 544-4131. Randy Wade's the district director, and we've got Marzie Thomas and Beanie Self and Linda Archer and Travis Green and Jeremy Jordan and Susan Sal and Willie Henry, all down there to help you. 544-4131, or go to our website, cohen.house.gov, sign up for our newsletter, and get weekly reports on what goes on in Washington.
All right, thank you, Congressman Cohen. Congratulations on winning again, and best of luck.
Thank you, Kontji, for being with us, and for everybody out there, thank you for your support, and happy holidays.